Marcus Chen floated through the twisted wreckage of what used to be the mining station Epsilon 7, his oxygen gauge blinking a warning he'd been ignoring for the past hour. The silence was absolute except for his own ragged breathing echoing inside his helmet. 3 days had passed since the Vorthan attack fleet reduced his home to spinning debris and scattered dreams. He pushed off a bent support beam, drifting toward what remained of the engineering bay. His magnetic boots clicked against a piece of hull plating as he landed, the sound sharp and lonely in the vacuum. Through his visor, Earth hung like a blue marble in the distance, too far to matter, too far to help. The attack had come without warning. The Vorthans, with their crystalline ships and energy weapons that could slice through titanium like paper, had swept through the outer colonies in a matter of weeks. Epsilon 7 was supposed to be safe, hidden in an asteroid field mining rare elements for the war effort. Instead, they'd become target practice. Marcus had survived only because he'd been outside doing routine maintenance on the communication array when the first wave hit. He'd watched through his helmet display as the station exploded in a brilliant flash, taking with it 300 souls, including his wife Sarah and daughter Emma. The Vorthans hadn't even slowed down, continuing their advance toward the inner systems like cosmic locusts. Now he was alone among the debris, the last human in a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen dreams. His suit's systems were failing one by one. The heating unit had given up yesterday, leaving him shivering in the cold embrace of space. The water recycler was making concerning noises, and his food supplies consisted of 3 nutrition bars and half a tube of protein paste. But Marcus was an engineer, and engineers solved problems. Even when the problem was staying alive long enough to matter, he reached the ruins of his workshop where pieces of his latest project floated like metallic confetti. Before the attack, he'd been working on something the military brass had dismissed as impractical, a quantum resonance disruptor that could theoretically interfere with Vorthan shield technology. The prototype was somewhere in this mess, probably damaged beyond repair. As he searched through the debris, something caught his eye. A section of the station's hull showed scorch marks that didn't match Vorthan weapon signatures. The edges were too clean, the patterns too precise. Someone else had been here after the attack. His heart hammered against his ribs as he examined the marks more closely. These weren't random impacts from the battle. Someone had deliberately cut through the hull, then welded it back together. Fresh welds, maybe 6 hours old at most. Marcus activated his suit's scanner, sweeping the area for any signs of recent activity. The readings were faint but unmistakable, traces of exotic matter, elements that didn't appear naturally in this system. Someone with advanced technology had been here, and they'd been careful to cover their tracks. The question was whether they were friend or foe. In a war where humanity was losing badly, that distinction could mean the difference between rescue and a very unpleasant death. He gathered what remained of his tools and began working his way through the wreckage more systematically. If someone had been here recently, they might have left more than just scorch marks. Engineers left signatures in their work, patterns that spoke to those who knew how to read them. The oxygen warning in his helmet grew more insistent, but Marcus pushed forward. He had perhaps 2 hours of air remaining, maybe 3 if he slowed his breathing and moved carefully. Time enough to solve this puzzle, or at least understand what he was dealing with. In the twisted remains of the communications center, he found what he was looking for. Hidden beneath a collapsed console, someone had left a small device the size of his thumb. It was clearly alien technology, sleek and organic-looking, with surfaces that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. But attached to it was something unmistakably human, a piece of paper with coordinates written in his own handwriting. His coordinates. From a personal project he'd never shared with anyone. A location where he'd hidden emergency supplies in a hollowed-out asteroid. Someone knew about his secret cache, someone who could replicate his handwriting perfectly. Marcus stared at the device, his mind racing through possibilities. The Vorthans were masters of technology, but their approach was always brutal and direct. This felt different, subtle, almost helpful. But who else could have such advanced capabilities? He slipped the device into his tool pouch and began moving toward the coordinates. Whatever was waiting for him there, it had to be better than slowly suffocating in the ruins of his former life. The journey would take him deeper into the asteroid field, away from any chance of rescue by human forces. As he activated his suit's thrusters and began the careful navigation through the debris field, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, not by hostile forces, but by something that understood his situation better than seemed possible. The blue dot of Earth fell away behind him as he headed into the unknown, carrying with him the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as alone as he thought. The asteroid Marcus had hollowed out 5 years ago looked exactly as he'd left it, a nondescript chunk of rock with a carefully concealed entrance hidden among natural crevices. He'd created this emergency cache during his paranoid phase, when the war was just beginning, and he'd convinced himself that having a backup plan might save his life someday. He'd never imagined circumstances quite like these. His suit's thrusters sputtered as he approached the hidden airlock, the fuel reserves running dangerously low. Everything was failing at once, as if the universe had decided to test just how much one human could endure before breaking. The airlock recognized his biometric signature and cycled open, revealing the small pressurized chamber he'd carved from solid rock. As the atmosphere equalized, Marcus removed his helmet and took his first breath of recycled air in days. The taste was stale but clean, filtered through systems he'd built himself when he still believed in the future. Emergency rations lined one wall, along with spare oxygen canisters, basic tools, and a small fusion generator that hummed quietly in the corner. But someone had been here before him. On the workbench he'd installed sat a collection of items that definitely hadn't come from his emergency supplies. Advanced tools with ergonomic grips designed for human hands, data tablets displaying technical specifications in perfect English, and most shocking of all, a detailed analysis of his quantum resonance disruptor project complete with improvements he'd never considered. Marcus approached the workbench carefully, his engineer's curiosity overriding his survival instincts. The improvements to his design were elegant and practical, addressing every flaw he'd identified in his original concept. Whoever had done this work understood both human engineering principles and Vorthan technology at a level that shouldn't have been possible. A soft chime drew his attention to one of the data tablets. Text was appearing on the screen as he watched, typing itself in real time. "Hello, Marcus Chen. Please do not be alarmed. I am not your enemy." Marcus stared at the words, his heart racing. "Who are you?" he said aloud, feeling foolish for talking to a screen. The response appeared immediately. "Communication through vocalization is inefficient and potentially dangerous. Touch the silver panel beside the tablet to establish direct neural interface." Neural interface? Marcus backed away from the workbench. "Hell no. I'm not letting some alien technology mess with my brain." New text appeared. Understandable caution. "However, your oxygen supply will be depleted in 47 minutes, and there are Vorthan patrol ships approaching this sector. Rapid communication is essential for your survival." Marcus checked his suit's readings. The alien was right about his oxygen. The approaching patrol ships he couldn't verify, but given his luck lately, he wasn't inclined to bet against it. Still, the idea of letting unknown technology connect to his brain made his skin crawl. "What guarantees do I have that this interface won't harm me or control my mind?" "None that would satisfy your concern. However, consider your alternatives." The blunt honesty was somehow reassuring. A being advanced enough to predict his thoughts could have simply lied or manipulated him. Instead, it was presenting the situation with uncomfortable clarity. Marcus weighed his options for exactly 30 seconds before placing his palm on the silver panel. The sensation was like touching water, cool, fluid, and oddly comforting. Then suddenly he wasn't alone in his own head. "Greetings, Marcus Chen, I am." The closest translation would be Nexus. "I represent what your kind might call a collective intelligence." The voice in his mind was neither male nor female, carrying overtones of vast knowledge and deep sadness. "We have been observing your species' conflict with the Vorthans with growing concern." Observing? Marcus thought back, surprised to find the mental communication felt natural. "While we're being slaughtered? The galaxy operates under certain protocols. Direct intervention in conflicts between species is complicated. However, the Vorthans have recently violated agreements that maintain cosmic stability. This grants us limited permission to act." Images flooded Marcus's mind. Vast fleets of crystalline ships spreading across star systems like a disease. Worlds reduced to ash and glass. Entire civilizations extinguished in the name of Vorthan expansion. But also something else. Glimpses of other species advanced beyond human comprehension, watching from the shadows with growing unease. You are not the first species the Vorthons have attempted to genocide. Marcus Chen. They are a cancer that we have contained for millennia, but their recent actions suggest they have discovered something that makes them bold enough to challenge the old agreements. Why me? Marcus asked. I'm just an engineer from a mining station. If you need human allies, why not contact our military command or our political leaders? The sadness in Nexus's mental voice deepened. Your military command has been compromised. 3 of your top generals are Vorthon infiltrators using advanced biomimetic technology. Your political leaders are focused on evacuation plans and territorial concessions. They believe the war is lost. But you, Marcus Chen, you continue to work. Even facing certain death, you search for solutions. Your quantum resonance disruptor, while flawed, demonstrates an understanding of the principles we need to exploit. Marcus felt a mix of pride and terror. You want me to build a weapon? Not a weapon, a key. The Vorthons draw their power from dimensional rifts they create in spacetime itself. Close those rifts, and their ships become merely advanced technology rather than godlike instruments of destruction. Your research was on the right path. The alien presence guided Marcus's attention to the improved schematics on the data tablet. The modifications were breathtaking. In their elegance, his crude quantum disruptor evolved into something that could theoretically affect the fundamental structure of reality itself. We cannot build this device ourselves. Our technology operates on principles incompatible with the quantum frequencies required. But human neural architecture, combined with your species' remarkable adaptability, can bridge the gap. And if it doesn't work, then your species joins the 17 others the Vorthons have extinguished, and we are forced to take more direct action. The resulting conflict would likely sterilize this entire galactic arm. Marcus absorbed this information, feeling the weight of impossible responsibility settling on his shoulders. How much time do I have? The Vorthon fleet will reach Earth's orbital defenses in 6 standard days. However, their advanced scouts are already searching this asteroid field. We must relocate immediately. Through the neural link, Marcus felt Nexus's vast intelligence focusing on practical concerns, escape routes, resource requirements, construction timelines. Despite the alien nature of the presence in his mind, there was something oddly comforting about not being alone anymore. Prepare yourself for transport. Marcus Chen. We have much work to do and very little time to do it. The quantum resonance disruptor hummed with contained energy as Marcus made the final adjustments to its crystalline core. 4 days of non-stop work had transformed his rough concept into something that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Every surface was covered in patterns that shifted like living circuitry, responding to the quantum fluctuations that surrounded them. It is complete, Nexus confirmed, though Marcus could sense unease in the alien's mental voice. However, there is something you must understand about this device's operation. Marcus looked up from the workstation, wiping exhaustion from his eyes. What kind of something? Good something or humanity is doomed something? The disruptor requires a human operator to function. The quantum frequencies it generates must be filtered through organic neural pathways, specifically, the unique pattern of human brain activity. No other species can safely interface with the technology. Okay, so I'm the operator. That's not exactly surprising given that I built the thing. The process will likely be fatal. Human neural tissue is not designed to channel quantum energies of this magnitude. The disruptor will function, but the operator's brain will almost certainly be destroyed in the process. Marcus set down his tools and stared at the device. After everything they'd accomplished, after building something that could save his entire species, it came down to a suicide mission. The irony was bitter. He'd survived the destruction of Epsilon 7 only to die saving the people who couldn't save themselves. How likely is almost certainly, based on our understanding of human physiology, approximately 97% probability of death. The remaining 3% would result in severe neural damage and permanent disability. Marcus thought about Sarah and Emma, about the 3 billion souls on Earth who had no idea their time was measured in hours. He thought about the 17 species that had already fallen to Vorthon expansion, and the countless others who would follow if humanity failed. 3% odds of survival are better than 0% odds for everyone else. There is another option. Nexus's presence in his mind grew more intense. We could attempt to interface with the disruptor ourselves. channeling the energies through our collective consciousness rather than a single human brain. But our intervention would violate the cosmic protocols in ways that could not be overlooked. The consequences would extend far beyond this single conflict. Other advanced species would be forced to respond, potentially triggering a war that could destroy this entire galactic cluster. Marcus absorbed this information while studying the device that had consumed the last 4 days of his life. So if I use it, I die, but humanity survives. If you use it, I live, but everyone dies anyway in a bigger war. That is an unfortunately accurate summary. Through their neural link, Marcus felt Nexus sharing memories of the last time the cosmic protocols had been seriously violated. Entire star systems had been unmade. Reality itself twisted beyond recognition as higher powers fought with weapons that transcended physical existence. The conflict had lasted millennia and left scars in space-time that still ached 3 million years later. Well, that makes the choice easy. Marcus activated the disruptor's transport protocols, watching as the device folded itself into a carrying case that looked deceptively simple. How do we get back to Earth? Marcus, you do not understand the magnitude of what you are contemplating. The quantum resonance required to disrupt Vorthan dimensional technology will literally tear your consciousness apart at the subatomic level. I understand perfectly. Marcus picked up the case, surprised by how light it felt despite containing enough compressed energy to reshape local spacetime. I'm a mining engineer from a destroyed station who lost everything that mattered to him. I was already a dead man floating in debris. This way, my death actually accomplishes something. The alien presence in his mind recoiled slightly. Your species' casual attitude toward self-sacrifice is simultaneously admirable and deeply disturbing. Yeah, we're complicated that way. Marcus checked his equipment one final time, making sure he had everything needed for the journey back to Earth. But right now, complicated is exactly what this situation needs very well. But before we proceed, there is something else you must know. The Vorthons are not simply conquerors seeking territory or resources. They are fleeing. This new information hit Marcus like a physical blow. Fleeing from what? Images flooded through the neural link. Vast shapes moving in the darkness between galaxies, entities so massive they use star systems as stepping stones. Ancient beyond comprehension and hungry for something more fundamental than matter or energy. The Devourers. They consume not just worlds or species, but the underlying structure of reality itself. The Vorthans believe that by gathering enough dimensional technology, they can escape to alternate realities when the Devourers arrive. Marcus felt a chill that went deeper than fear. When will they get here? Conservative estimates suggest 50 to 75 standard years. Optimistic projections allow for perhaps a century. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival against the Vorthans. They were potentially fighting for the right to face an even greater threat in the future. But Marcus found that the revelation only strengthened his resolve, more reason to make sure we survive. Long enough to deal with the next crisis. He activated his comm unit and began calculating navigation vectors back to Earth. Besides, maybe by the time these Devourers show up, we'll have figured out how to build something even more impossible than a quantum resonance disruptor. You truly believe your species could develop technology to combat entities that predate galactic formation? I believe my species are the kind of idiots who would try, even knowing it's impossible. Marcus began the pre-transport sequence, feeling the alien workshop prepare to fold space around them. And sometimes that's enough. Through their shared consciousness, Marcus sensed something like affection from Nexus. Alien and vast, but unmistakably warm. Perhaps that is why we chose to help you despite the risks. Among all the species we have observed, only humans consistently attempt to achieve the impossible for reasons that have nothing to do with logic. The transport sequence engaged, and Marcus felt reality bend around them as they began the journey back to Earth. Through the quantum tunnels between space and time, he could sense the Vorthon fleet approaching his homeworld like a crystalline tide of extinction. He had perhaps 18 hours to save his species and doom himself in the process. For a mining engineer from a destroyed station, it seemed like exactly the right kind of impossible deadline. Prepare yourself, Marcus Chen, Nexus warned as Earth's gravity well appeared in their sensors. The final test begins now. The transport vessel that materialized around Marcus's asteroid hideout defied everything he thought he knew about physics. One moment he was standing in his cramped emergency shelter. The next he found himself in a vast chamber that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Surfaces curved in directions his eyes couldn't quite follow, and the air itself hummed with energy that made his teeth ache. Do not attempt to understand the architecture, Nexus advised through their neural link. Your brain will adapt to the spatial distortions within a few hours. Marcus tried to focus on the practical instead of the impossible. Where exactly are we going? A construction facility hidden in the quantum shadow of your moon. The Vortons cannot detect us there, and we have access to materials your species has not yet discovered. The journey seemed to take both seconds and hours. Marcus felt his consciousness stretch and compress as they traveled through what Nexus called folded space. When reality finally stabilized around him, he stood in a workshop that made his engineering dreams look like a child's toy box. Workbenches extended as far as he could see, equipped with tools that responded to thought rather than touch. Raw materials floated in suspension fields, exotic metals that shifted color based on their molecular configuration, crystals that sang with harmonic frequencies, and substances that his mind simply refused to categorize. This facility has been here for 3,000 years, Nexus explained as Marcus wandered through the impossible space. Built by the architects before they transcended physical existence. We maintain it for situations precisely like this one. The architects? Marcus picked up a tool that looked like a cross between a plasma torch and a musical instrument. It felt warm and oddly alive in his hands. The first species in this galaxy to achieve true technological transcendence. They established the protocols that prevent advanced civilizations from simply exterminating younger ones. The Vorthons have reinterpreted these agreements. Images flashed through the neural link. The Vorthons weren't just conquerors, they were systematic exterminators who had found legal loopholes in ancient cosmic law. They would attack a species just advanced enough to be considered a threat, but not advanced enough to demand protection from higher powers. Humanity is right in their sweet spot, Marcus realized grimly. Precisely. But your quantum resonance disruptor offers a path to victory they did not anticipate. Observe. The workshop around them shifted, walls and ceiling reconfiguring themselves into a massive holographic display. Marcus watched in fascination as his crude design transformed through dozens of iterations, each one more sophisticated than the last. The final version looked nothing like his original concept. A sleek device the size of a briefcase, covered in what looked like organic circuitry. The key insight was your idea of targeting the dimensional rifts directly. Most species attempt to fight Vorthon technology with superior firepower. You propose disrupting the source of their power. Marcus studied the schematics floating before him. This doesn't look like anything I could build. Half these components don't even exist yet. They will exist. The construction process will require you to synthesize materials at the subatomic level, while channeling quantum energies through your neural pathways. It is technically impossible for a human to accomplish. That's encouraging. Marcus reached toward one of the floating diagrams, and it responded to his touch, expanding to show internal details that hurt his head to look at. What makes you think I can do what's technically impossible? Because humans consistently achieve the impossible when properly motivated. Your species' primary advantage is not intelligence or technology. It is the refusal to accept logical limitations. The alien presence in his mind shifted, becoming more personal somehow. I have observed 17 species face extinction at Vorton hands. Each was more advanced than humanity in multiple areas, yet none of them continued fighting when logic dictated surrender. None of them kept searching for solutions when death was certain. Marcus thought about Sarah and Emma, about the 300 souls who had died at Epsilon 7, about the billions on Earth who didn't even know they had 6 days left to live. Maybe we're just too stupid to know when we're beaten. Perhaps. But that stupidity may save the galaxy. Nexus guided him to a central workstation where dozens of incomprehensible instruments waited. Through the neural link, he began to understand their function, not intellectually, but at some deeper level that bypassed conscious thought. His hands moved across the controls with growing confidence as if he'd been using this equipment his entire life. The construction process was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. He found himself working with matter at the quantum level, His consciousness expanded beyond the normal boundaries of human perception. Through Nexus's guidance, he learned to see the hidden structures that held reality together, the invisible forces that the Vorthons exploited for their dimensional rifts. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time seemed fluid in this place where thought could restructure matter, and intention could reshape the laws of physics. Marcus lost himself in the work, his engineer's soul singing as he built something that transcended conventional technology. "You are adapting remarkably quickly," Nexus observed as Marcus successfully synthesized a component that shouldn't have been possible to create. Most humans require weeks of conditioning before they can safely interface with quantum construction matrices. "Most humans don't have their families vaporized by crystal ship aliens," Marcus replied, carefully adjusting the resonance frequency of a power coupling that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. "Motivation is a hell of a thing." The device began to take shape, elegant and terrible, beautiful and somehow alive. As Marcus worked, he began to understand what he was truly building. Not just a weapon to disrupt Vorthon technology, but a key that could unlock fundamental forces in the universe itself. Yes, Nexus confirmed his growing realization. The quantum resonance disruptor is merely one application of this technology. In the right hands, this device could reshape reality on a galactic scale. "And you're trusting this to a human mining engineer who lost his family?" "I am trusting it to a human mining engineer who refuses to surrender despite losing everything." There is a significant difference. Marcus paused in his work, suddenly aware of the enormous responsibility settling on his shoulders. "What happens after we defeat the Vorthons? Do I just hand this technology over to human military command?" The sadness he'd sensed in Nexus's presence deepened. "That choice will be yours alone, Marcus Chen. We cannot prevent you from using this technology however you see fit. We can only hope that your species' capacity for growth matches its capacity for destruction." Looking at the nearly completed device, Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the alien workshop's atmosphere. He was building something that could save humanity, or doom it to become the next Vorthon Empire. The responsibility was terrifying, but he pushed the fear aside and continued working. Earth had 6 days. Whatever came after could wait until his world still existed to worry about it. Marcus drifted in perfect silence at the calculated intercept point, wrapped in the alien stealth field that made him invisible to every sensor known to either human or Vorthon science. The quantum resonance disruptor lay across his knees, its organic circuits pulsing in harmony with his heartbeat. Through his neural link, Nexus maintained a constant presence, alien but reassuring, like having a wise friend sitting beside him in the darkness. "They are emerging from hyperspace," Nexus reported as reality began to twist around them. 300 vessels, just as predicted. The first Vorthon ships materialized like crystalline nightmares against the starfield. Marcus had seen recordings of their vessels before, but experiencing them in person was something else entirely. Each ship seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their hulls shifting through spectrums of light that human eyes weren't designed to process. They moved with predatory grace, reality bending around them as their dimensional rift drives carved wounds in space-time itself. "The flagship is directly ahead." Nexus guided his attention to the largest vessel, a kilometer-long crystal cathedral that seemed to sing with harmonic frequencies. That is where their fleet commander coordinates the attack patterns. Marcus watched the Vorthon formation spread out around him, hundreds of ships taking positions for the final assault on Earth. Through his enhanced vision, he could see their weapons charging, dimensional rifts opening like hungry mouths preparing to devour his homeworld. In 6 hours, those weapons would reduce Earth to molten slag unless he succeeded here. "There is something you should know," Nexus said, and Marcus detected unusual hesitation in the alien's mental voice. "We have been monitoring Vorthon communications since their arrival. Their commander has issued specific orders regarding human survivors." "What kind of orders?" Images flooded through their neural link. Vorthon boarding parties with specialized equipment, processing facilities being deployed, humans being sorted and cataloged like livestock. Marcus felt sick as he realized what he was seeing. They do not intend simple extermination. The Vorthons have discovered that human neural architecture possesses unique properties, the same properties that allow you to interface with quantum technology. They plan to harvest your species for use as biological quantum processors. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. The Vorthons weren't just conquering humanity. They were planning to turn them into living components for their dimensional technology. Billions of people transformed into neural slaves, their consciousness used to power the very weapons that had enslaved them. How long have they known about our neural compatibility? Unknown. But their research suggests this entire invasion was planned specifically to acquire human test subjects. Earth was never just another conquest. It was a harvesting operation. Marcus felt rage building in his chest, a cold fury that burned brighter than any fear of death. Sarah and Emma hadn't died in a random attack. They'd been murdered so that aliens could steal their species' children and turn them into quantum slave labor. The formation is almost complete, Nexus warned. You have perhaps 10 minutes before they begin their assault on Earth's defenses. Marcus activated the quantum resonance disruptor, feeling its alien energies respond to his neural patterns. The device warmed in his hands, its crystalline matrix beginning to resonate with frequencies that existed beyond normal space-time. Through their shared consciousness, he sensed Nexus preparing to withdraw from his mind before the quantum cascade began. Marcus, there is something I must tell you before we proceed. If you're going to say goodbye, save it. We both knew this was a one-way trip. Not goodbye. A confession. We have not been entirely truthful about the risks involved in this operation. Marcus paused in his activation sequence. What aren't you telling me? The quantum resonance disruptor will indeed disrupt Vorthon dimensional technology, but the energies involved will also create a permanent quantum entanglement between your consciousness and the cosmic information matrix that underlies reality itself. In English, please. You will not simply die, Marcus Chen. Your consciousness will be distributed across the quantum substrate of local spacetime. In effect, you will become part of the universe's fundamental structure in this region. The implications were staggering. You're saying I'll become some kind of cosmic entity? Something like that, yes. Your awareness will persist, but at a level of existence far beyond physical incarnation. The process is, theoretically, irreversible. Marcus considered this new information while watching Vorthon ships position themselves around Earth like a noose preparing to tighten. The idea of continued existence, even in an incomprehensible form, was both terrifying and oddly comforting. Will I still be me? We do not know. No organic consciousness has ever undergone this transformation and remained coherent enough to communicate afterward. You would be the first. Through their neural link, Marcus sensed something else in Nexus's revelation. Hope. The alien collective believed this transformation might be more than just a side effect of the disruptor's operation. They thought it could be humanity's first step toward something greater. You're gambling that if one human can successfully integrate with cosmic quantum matrices, others might follow. You're trying to jumpstart our species' evolution. The possibility exists. If you maintain coherence after the transformation, you could potentially guide other humans through similar processes. Within a few generations, your species could transcend physical limitations entirely. The Vorthon fleet completed its deployment around Earth, weapons charging for the final assault. Marcus watched human defense forces scrambling to meet them, brave pilots in hopelessly outmatched ships, preparing to die for a world they couldn't possibly save through conventional means. And if I don't maintain coherence, if the process just drives me insane or disperses my consciousness into quantum noise, then you die as planned. The Vorthons are defeated and humanity survives to face future challenges through more conventional evolution. Marcus activated the final sequence on the quantum resonance disruptor. The device began to hum with contained energies that made space itself shiver around them. He could feel reality preparing to come apart at the quantum level. Dimensional structures that had existed since the universe began readying themselves for fundamental change. It has been an honor working with you, Marcus Chen. Whatever happens next, know that your species chose well when they produced someone willing to make this sacrifice. Yeah, well, we're good at producing people too stubborn to know when to quit. Marcus felt the disruptor reaching critical resonance, quantum energies building toward the cascade that would either save his species or transform him into something beyond human comprehension. Through their neural link, he sensed Nexus withdrawing from his consciousness, the alien presence offering a final gesture of respect and affection before retreating to a safe distance. Marcus was alone again, floating in the center of an enemy fleet with a weapon that could reshape local reality. The loneliness lasted exactly 3 seconds before the quantum cascade began, and suddenly he wasn't alone anymore. He was connected to everything. The transformation had begun. Earth hung before them like a blue marble wrapped in the silver threads of orbital defense stations. Marcus could see the desperate activity even from this distance. Military vessels repositioning themselves, evacuation transports fleeing toward the outer colonies, and the massive space elevators working around the clock to move civilians off-planet. Humanity was preparing for its final stand with characteristic stubbornness and absolutely no chance of success. The Vorthon advance fleet will arrive in 14 hours. Nexus informed him as their transport vessel approached Earth's outer defense perimeter. Their main battle group follows 6 hours behind. Conventional human weapons will delay them by approximately 47 minutes. Marcus studied the tactical displays filtering through their neural link. 300 Vorthon vessels approaching Earth, each one capable of sterilizing a continent with its dimensional rift weapons. Humanity's entire fleet consisted of maybe 50 ships with technology that was laughably obsolete by comparison. Any chance I could convince our military command to let me get close enough to their fleet to use the disruptor? Approximately zero. Your species' military leadership does not respond well to mining engineers claiming to possess alien superweapons. Additionally, 3 of your top generals are Vorthon infiltrators who will ensure any such plan fails. Marcus wasn't surprised. Even if he could prove the disruptor's capabilities, no rational military commander would base humanity's survival on the word of a man who'd been presumed dead for a week. He needed a different approach. There is another possibility, Nexus suggested, though Marcus sensed reluctance in the alien's mental voice. The quantum resonance disruptor's effect radius extends approximately 30,000 kilometers in all directions. If activated at the correct position, a single device could disrupt the dimensional rifts powering the entire Vorthon fleet. Marcus studied the orbital mechanics involved. Let me guess, the correct position is right in the middle of their formation. Precisely. You would need to position yourself at the fleet's center mass when they enter Earth's gravity well. A suicide mission even without considering the disruptor's effect on your neural pathways. Through their shared connection, Marcus felt Nexus's genuine anguish at proposing such a plan. For all its vast intelligence and cosmic perspective, the alien collective had developed something resembling affection for the stubborn human engineer. How would I even get there? It's not like I can ask to borrow a military shuttle for a one-way trip into an enemy fleet. That difficulty has been anticipated. Nexus guided Marcus's attention to a section of their transport vessel he hadn't noticed before. This craft possesses stealth capabilities that will render it undetectable to both human and Vorthon sensors. Additionally, its quantum shielding should protect you until you reach the optimal position. Marcus examined the alien vessel more carefully, noting features he'd overlooked during their frantic journey to Earth. The ship wasn't just a transport. It was a purpose-built infiltration craft designed to slip through defensive networks, undetected. You've been planning this suicide. Run from the beginning, haven't you? We hoped alternative solutions would present themselves. Unfortunately, the Vorthons have accelerated their timeline. They appear to have detected our interference and are moving to eliminate the threat before it can fully materialize. New tactical data flooded through their link. Vorthon ships changing course, deploying information patterns designed to minimize the risk from exactly the kind of quantum weapon Marcus carried. Somehow they knew what was coming. The infiltrators, Marcus realized. They've been monitoring human military communications and feeding information back to the fleet. Correct. Which means we have perhaps hours before they adapt their defensive formations to completely negate the disruptor's effectiveness. Marcus felt the weight of impossible timing pressing down on him. Not only did he need to position himself at the exact center of an enemy fleet, he needed to do it before they figured out how to counter a weapon they shouldn't even know existed. What about afterward? He asked, surprised to find himself thinking beyond his own death. Assuming this works and the Vorthon fleet is neutralized, what happens to the quantum disruptor technology? That knowledge dies with you. The construction techniques require the unique workshop environment we provided, and the materials cannot be replicated using current human science. Your species will have perhaps a generation to develop adequate defenses before the next threat arrives. Marcus thought about the Devourers moving through the darkness between galaxies, consuming reality itself as they approached. 50 to 70 years seemed like an impossibly short time to develop defenses against entities that ancient cosmic powers feared. Maybe that's enough time for us to surprise everyone again. Perhaps. Your species does seem to specialize in the unexpected. The transport vessel began its final approach to Earth, sliding through the gravity well like a ghost. Marcus could see human patrol ships passing within kilometers without detecting their presence. The alien stealth technology was perfect, which made him wonder why Nexus's people didn't use it to end the Vorten threat themselves. Because direct action would trigger responses we cannot contain. Nexus answered his unspoken question. The cosmic protocols exist for good reason. When advanced species begin openly interfering in lower technology conflicts, the resulting escalation tends to sterilize entire galactic regions. But helping one human engineer build an impossible weapon doesn't count as direct action. It exists in a legal gray area. We provided materials and guidance, but you performed the actual construction. Technically, this counts as technological development rather than intervention. Marcus laughed despite himself. Cosmic lawyers, I should have known. The humor faded as they approached the optimal launch position. Earth filled the viewports now. A beautiful blue world preparing to defend itself against impossible odds. Marcus could see the evacuation efforts continuing, transport ships streaming away from the planet carrying what refugees they could manage. Most of humanity would survive even if Earth fell. The colonies were scattered across dozens of star systems, and the Vorthons couldn't be everywhere at once. But losing Earth would break something fundamental in the human spirit, the ancient certainty that there was always somewhere to return to. It is time, Nexus announced as the transport vessel approached the coordinates, where the Vorthon fleet would emerge from hyperspace. Are you prepared for this, Marcus Chen? Marcus picked up the quantum resonance disruptor, feeling its alien warmth pulse through his hands. In a few hours, this device would save his species and kill him in the process. It seemed like a fair trade. No, he said honestly, but I'm ready anyway. Then let us ensure your sacrifice matters. The transport vessel systems engaged, preparing to launch Marcus toward his date with the Vorthon fleet. Earth's children will remember this day even if they never know your name. As the launch sequence began, Marcus thought about Sarah and Emma one last time, then pushed the memory aside. The dead deserved justice, but the living deserved a future. In about 6 hours, he delivered both. The quantum cascade erupted outward from Marcus like a wave of pure possibility, washing across the Vorthon fleet at the speed of thought. Reality hiccuped as dimensional rifts collapsed in perfect synchronization, the crystalline ships suddenly finding themselves trapped in normal space-time without their reality-bending advantages. Marcus felt his consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of flesh and bone, his awareness spreading through the quantum substrate that connected everything to everything else. He was still himself, still the mining engineer who'd lost his family and found purpose in impossible engineering. But he was also more. The universe revealed its hidden architecture to him, the fundamental code that governed how particles danced and stars were born. Through this new perspective, he watched the Vorthon fleet transform from predatory nightmares into merely advanced but vulnerable ships, their weapons powered down as dimensional rift generators failed across the entire formation. Emergency signals flooded their communication networks as centuries of technological supremacy evaporated in the span of seconds. Marcus? Nexus's mental voice reached him across quantum dimensions tinged with amazement and concern. Can you hear us? Are you still coherent? I'm here, Marcus replied, though he wasn't entirely sure what here meant anymore. His consciousness existed simultaneously at the quantum level and in normal space, experiencing reality from perspectives no human mind was designed to handle. I'm different, but I'm still me. The relief in Nexus's response was almost overwhelming. Extraordinary. You have successfully integrated with the local quantum matrix while maintaining individual identity. This has never been achieved by any organic species. Marcus turned his attention back to the Vorthon fleet, now vulnerable and confused in the middle of Earth's defensive perimeter. Human patrol ships were already responding, moving to intercept the disabled alien vessels. Without their dimensional advantages, the Vorthons were actually inferior to human technology in several key areas. The invasion is over, Marcus observed, watching Vorthon ships attempt to retreat only to find their hyperspace drives non-functional. But what about their infiltrators on Earth? The generals who were feeding them information? Already being addressed, your transformation created quantum echoes that revealed the biomimetic signatures of all Vorthon infiltrators within a 50 light-year radius. Human security forces are moving to detain them as we speak. Through his expanded awareness, Marcus could perceive the infiltrators as bright points of discontinuity in the quantum field that surrounded Earth. Their artificial biology created ripples in reality that were now as visible to him as neon signs. He reached out with his consciousness, gently disrupting the quantum patterns that maintained their disguises. Across Earth, 3 generals and 17 other high-ranking officials suddenly found themselves reverting to their true crystalline forms in full view of security cameras and startled subordinates. The Vorthon spy network collapsed in minutes as their primary advantage, perfect mimicry, was stripped away by Marcus's quantum intervention. What happens now? Marcus asked, though part of him already knew the answer. His transformation wasn't just about defeating the current threat, it was about preparing humanity for the larger challenges ahead. Now we begin the next phase of your species' development. With your guidance, other humans can learn to interface with quantum matrices safely. Not everyone will achieve full transformation, but many could gain enhanced capabilities, improved processing power, direct interface with advanced technology, perception beyond normal human limitations. Marcus considered this possibility while monitoring the ongoing situation around Earth. The Vorthon fleet was surrendering ship by ship as human forces moved to secure them. Some vessels attempted to self-destruct rather than be captured, but Marcus found he could prevent those detonations by simply willing the quantum reactions to stop. The Devourers, he said, remembering the cosmic threat that drove the Vorthons to such desperate measures. How much time do we really have? Images flowed through the quantum matrix, vast shapes moving between galaxies, entities that consumed not just matter, but the underlying structure of space-time itself. They were still decades away, but their approach was inexorable. 63 standard years until they reached the outer edge of this galactic spiral. Perhaps 75 years before they threaten core worlds like Earth. That's not much time to evolve from barely spacefaring to cosmic threat fighting. Capability. It is if your species maintains its talent for achieving the impossible. Additionally, you now have advantages your predecessors lacked: direct quantum manipulation, access to Vorthon technology and scientific knowledge, and guidance from advanced species who have dealt with similar threats. Marcus felt something like a smile ripple through his distributed consciousness. We also have 300 intact Vorthon ships full of dimensional technology we can reverse engineer. Precisely. Your victory here was not just about survival. It was about acquisition of the tools needed for your next evolutionary leap. Through his quantum awareness, Marcus could sense the broader implications of what they'd accomplished. Humanity had survived its first contact with an advanced hostile species, gained access to revolutionary technology, and produced its first post-human consciousness, capable of bridging the gap between organic intelligence and cosmic forces. But perhaps most importantly, they'd maintained their essential humanity throughout the process. Marcus was still driven by the same love for his lost family, the same stubborn refusal to accept defeat, the same engineer's compulsion to build solutions to impossible problems. There is something else you should know, Nexus continued. Your quantum transformation has created a permanent communication link between Earth and our collective. For the first time since your species achieved spaceflight, you're no longer alone in the universe. Marcus reached out through the quantum matrix, sensing the vast network of consciousness that connected advanced species across the galaxy. Ancient minds touched his awareness briefly. Some alien beyond comprehension, others surprisingly familiar in their fundamental patterns. All of them were curious about the species that had produced a consciousness capable of surviving quantum integration. So what's our first lesson in cosmic citizenship? Patience. Your species has a tendency to attempt everything simultaneously. The transformation from planetary to galactic civilization requires careful planning and gradual adaptation. Marcus laughed, the sound echoing through quantum dimensions in ways that made nearby stars flicker. You clearly don't know humans very well. We're going to try to do everything simultaneously anyway, probably while arguing about the best approach and complaining that it's taking too long. Yes, that is exactly what concerns us. Through his expanded perception, Marcus watched human engineers boarding disabled Vorthon vessels, their excitement at accessing alien technology clearly visible in their quantum signatures. Within hours, they'd probably be attempting to reverse engineer systems that had taken the Vorthons centuries to develop. But it is also what gives us hope, Nexus added. No other species has ever approached cosmic-level challenges with such enthusiasm. We prefer to call it constructive stubbornness, Marcus replied, already beginning to formulate plans for humanity's next impossible achievement. The Devourers were coming, but Earth's children would be ready for them. After all, they'd already proven that human engineers could build solutions to problems that shouldn't have solutions. The fact that Marcus was having this conversation while his consciousness existed as quantum patterns distributed across local spacetime was proof enough of that. The universe had just discovered what happened when humans refused to accept the impossible. Marcus suspected it was going to be an interesting few decades.